Hello everyone, Ruby Ravel here, antique dealer of astrological improbabilities, and today I want to talk to you about the second house. The reason I have chosen this for my subject is because I am currently experiencing a transit of Jupiter and the North Node through this house, but also because it is one little nook of the horoscope that has long evaded my understanding, and there is good reason for this. Not only do I have no natal placements there, and that Mars, the ruler of my second house, is rather compromised by a trine to Saturn and a sextile to Chiron that makes it a somewhat wounded and guarded area for me. Because of my Aquarius rising and Sagittarian moon, I often find things easier to understand when they're complex and hyper-rational and involve all kinds of complex computations. Whereas a lot of everyday, ordinary things that aren't rational, but which are purely instinctual and animal, can pass me by. Sometimes the only way I can understand these simple, ordinary things is by taking a Jovian approach and finding ways to make them complex so I can translate them into the love language of Ruby Ravel. Probably one of the things that didn't very much help this process is that there is a lot of misleading or rather slipshod information concerning the second house. When we say second house, the first buzzwords that jump to mind are money, values, possessions. But the human race was not born with money, and values can also sound very remote and abstract and theoretical until we realize they are innate bodily responses rather than something more cerebral and aesthetic. Now, I said in my last video on Venus in Taurus that the second house is an expression of our basic values, but it also marks a very important juncture in our development as unique human beings, in that it's also the crucial fork in the road where those basic needs begin to manifest themselves as personal preferences and individual choices. When we are first born emergent into the world in the first house, we don't have any choices. We are entirely dependent on our parents or caregivers to make those choices before us. And those choices end up being extensions of the values and lifestyles and beliefs and thinking patterns of our parents, but they are also revolve around necessity. We have to eat because otherwise we will die of starvation. We have to drink, otherwise we will die of dehydration. We have to sleep, otherwise that will deteriorate our body's functionality and make us cranky. And we also need to stay at a good temperature, otherwise we will die of heat exposure or of hypothermia from being too cold. All of these things are pure necessity, but as we gradually evolve and get a deeper sense of what I means beyond mere bodily survival, we realize that there are choices we can make about these things. We don't just have to eat anything that comes along. We may have preferences about the food we are given, that we feel happy and joyful when mummy gives us spaghetti hoops, but we become grumpy and cry if she tries to make us eat legumes. We may like it when she puts us in the yellow raincoat that makes us feel like a mini sailor, and then cry if she tries to change our diaper, even if it's become soiled. So in the second house, we realize that the ways in which we choose to survive, leaning into the things that we organically and viscerally find pleasant, and finding ways of resisting the things that we find vulgar, repulsive, or unpleasant, can tell us things about ourselves as an individual. And this is what we mean by values. Later on, as we grow up, we can force ourselves to expand our minds. We can interact with other people. We can have these lengthy Libran philosophical discussions with them, in which someone may explain the relative merits or demerits of their own personal values. But at that raw early stage, where we are just aware of our own body's responses, not anyone else's, those values do arise from our senses. We notice that when Daddy puts on a particular piece of rock music, it makes us feel energetic and happy. when mummy puts on the Dixie Chicks, it makes time feel like it is being condensed into a small eternity of jagged, sharp fractals digging into one's neurons. So money only then becomes an extension of second house values and core individual needs, once it has been abstracted enough further down the line to be something that we associate with having the autonomy to be able to buy things that express our individual values. Once we reach a stage in life where we realize that having money means we can buy the clothes that we like, that we can attend the concerts that we wish to go to, that we can choose which foods to eat, which not, then money becomes a second house issue. But for some people, if they don't make that association, it may not be a second house issue at all. This flourishing and expanding of our own personal values helps to then bolster a deepening understanding of the other, of social interactions, of the rules of exchange, of the interchange of energies, and energies manifest as physical objects that go back and forth between two people, as well as instinctual abstract values. We realize that it is often nicer if we get together to play with the children who like to play in the same way as us, rather than playing with those who do games that we find unpleasant. We might prefer playing with people who want to play Happy Family and be repulsed by those who want to roll around in the mud wrestling with one another. Both of these different groups are trying to express the things that they love and which make them feel good, but it can teach us something about the need to compromise or how we socially organize ourselves relative to what experiences we want to maximize or minimize our exposure to in this world. This is also the house where we really start to learn some of the rules of mutuality surrounding giving and receiving things, whether those are objects or whether those are energies or qualities that we share with another person. In the first house, we just experience that raw fight for survival, that if we want something, we will go out and get it. We are the hunter or we are the gatherer who is making an entrance onto the world in pursuit of the things that they need or that they desire. And if they find someone else who has that thing, then they will fight them. In the second house, we learn that there are more subtle, more pleasant, more socially harmonious ways of going about this. If someone else has something that we want, we can give them something that they might want in return. And that involves reaching some kind of middle ground of valuation. If I say, I love your Gucci wristwatch, I'll give you my red poncho for it, that won't be a fair trade if you don't want a red poncho. However, if that Gucci wristwatch is meaningless to you, but you think red ponchos are the greatest thing in the world, then you might think this is a fair bargain, even if economically it were not so. In that regard, the second house is also the true first relationship house of the horoscope, because it is the point where we begin to have to navigate the relationship of our values to the eighth house of other people's values. That this is the house of very conditional love, where the joy that we give and receive and share with someone is very much transactional and very material and very rational and very logical. We meet someone, we say, this person makes me feel good, and in order to express my gratitude for that and to ensure that they keep making me feel good, I will find out what they like and I will give them the things that they want. It's very much like when we see birds in the wild picking up pretty sticks or shiny objects and giving them to one another as exchanges of love. And this is very true for people who tend to have Venus in the second house, that they associate love or the expression of love with gift giving and material objects, because sometimes those abstract romantic emotions are very hard to comprehend and very awkward to internally navigate. However, if we can say, this red rose I'm giving you is a depiction of the love that I feel for you inside, we have taken something that is intangible and mysterious and we have grounded it in a specific object. And people with strong second house placements very often can then become people who are inveterate collectors or shoppers or traders, because once they get to know what their values are, they feel that need to weight those values in material objects and to surround themselves with them. It's not enough that these values just kind of live esoterically inside them. They want to communicate them outside of themselves as an extension of themselves. I know people with strong second house placements who collect ornate spoons or Alice in Wonderland memorabilia, or someone with Mercury in the third house might collect rare books. It's all about saying, I'm collecting these things and feel the need to hoard these resources because they tell and communicate something about myself. This says something about who I am as a unique individual, and having these things gives me a sense of beauty and individuality and self-worth, as well as being a living symbol that can attract people of like-minded values to me. If you're wearing a band t-shirt of some musicians that you really love, someone else on the street can look at that and say, hey, we're part of the same club, we love the same band, let's go out for a drink. If you belong to the LGBT community, you might be feeling a bit lonely. If you see a bunch of other people in the neighborhood wearing rainbows, you think, good, there's some other queer cats about that I can hang out with. I am not alone in the world. So there is a real strong social apparatus behind the mechanism by which we choose to manifest our values as physical things. We see this in the earlier societies with the tattoos or red ochre markings that they give themselves, or their piercings. Even when we were content with just having naked bodies, we still felt the need to do something extra to those naked bodies, so that they were not just this kind of blank canvas, but something which we had painted on and said, this is me. And by doing this, I have shown you something that is hidden within me, and I have given it a form so that you can understand me and you can love me more deeply too. Anyway, that's all I really want to say, just kind of expressing some of the thoughts and eureka moments I've been having in relationship to this house that has evaded my understanding for such a long time. I think because it is so close, because it is so instinctual and not rational, it's only through doing the Aquarian thing and looking at it through that anthropological lens that I can be like, I get it now. I understand why people want stuff. Makes sense. Can still definitely be a pathological and compulsive urge sometimes, and we often see this in when people have Pluto placements in connection with the second house, where the drive to have or consume certain objects or things can be so deeply connected with the drive to survive and avoid death that it can actually be self-destructive. But that's probably something best left for another video, don't you think? Anyway, if you've enjoyed this or have any of your own second house placements that you want to share or talk about with me, I would love to hear from you. It would help to educate me in this area of my ignorance. If you would like any spiritual or astrological counseling, feel free to email me on the address below. And if you want to support me on Patreon, that would just be divine. Shucks, honey, that would be just so swell of you. And yeah, that's all for now.